is from reputable sources and avoid spreading information and misinformation. In fact, we don't need to be distributing a lot of the things we are, because they are relevant sources who can provide the information. And if you're having difficulty functioning in the way that you usually do, as Dipna mentioned on multiple occasions, you have peripheral clinics, you have your private doctors, you have HSA and other entities that you can seek the help you need.
Okay, that's Dipna.
Well, I mean, I think it's just about returning to normal as quickly as possible, and to reassure people that if you are still feeling a bit shaky, a bit nervous, it's not uncommon. But if you have any concerns, go and see your general practitioner, go into the clinics, also see the nurses, and if need be, you can ask to see myself. I'm very happy to see people. And on a final note, I really want to reiterate the importance of having an old-time radio in your home. As a community psychiatric nurse, I encourage this all the time with my patients, from the therapeutic and the entertainment value, but also from an information value. It's a reputable resource. Keep it. It's very reassuring to know that on hand you have that information, and particularly with hazard management coming through the airways now in the event of an unprecedented event. So keep a radio, please.
Okay, and Ms. Danielle, an overall hazard management perspective from not only from the mental being standpoint, but physical as well, and infrastructural.
Yeah, and again, going back to Dipna's point there, it's so important, an old-fashioned radio at your house, because that's where our phase 1, the radio interrupts, come through. But also, I mean, don't wait. If you feel a very, very strong earthquake, don't wait for us to tell you it's an earthquake. Make sure you're responding accordingly. Make sure you have your family plan in place. Now, everyone's plans will be different. All families are very specific. You have specific needs. And it's not just a hurricane plan. It's a multi-purpose disaster plan. So make sure you know how you're going to contact each other. If by chance we didn't have comms, make sure you know how you'll find each other. Make sure you know what to do in the event that you're at school and you're, adults are at work and so forth. But have a family plan and have a disaster kit that actually can respond to that for your own specific needs. But again, we're really, really happy to help with school visits, with service clubs, with anyone who needs this kind of information. We have a lot of it on our website, again, www.cameprepared.ky, which includes a template for family emergency plans. So please reach out to us if you need extra help. And we're here to help you and make sure that you're empowered enough to respond accordingly in any event.
Okay, before you go, one thing that I hear some people still talk about after the earthquake, that they still feel that they're feeling aftershocks, but they're not really feeling aftershocks. It's something similar to vertigo that they're still experiencing. That's more of a physical health issue as opposed to a mental one?
Well, actually, I think that's a three-way component to answer, because, Danny, I'm sure how many aftershocks
we've had? I think it was 23 recorded right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and there is a physical component to it as well, that it does, our equilibrium goes, our balance goes. Mm-hmm. And for some people who have perhaps sensitivities, who have had problems in the past, who also suffer from vertigo, or, for maybe there's some health issue within, the brain itself that is impacting that.
Let me say a little on that.
Sure.
So, one of the things I was talking about was after a trauma, you can have what is called a reliving experience. Yes, yeah. So, even though you're not physically experiencing the traumatic situation, for example, the earthquake, you could literally feel as if it was happening again. So the thing to consider in this instance is, one, to provide yourself with relevant information. So if you felt that you had this aftershock, the thing to do would be go on the HCMI website or to check reputable sources to see, did we have an aftershock? If your information that you receive suggests that no, then you have to, and you're still experiencing these things ongoing, then it means that for some reason your brain is providing information that is not happening, and so that would be concerning, and you would need to visit somebody who could assist you with, and Dipna outline all the persons that you could visit.
We did have a session with Infinite Mind Care on Saturday morning at Books and Books, and it was actually quite incredible how many people said that was the feeling they were feeling, that sort of disorientation and also the nausea and a bit of the just not quite balanced. So I think it's currently being felt by quite a few people.
Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you for the important work that you're doing, and within our communities. I must say again that the people of the Cayman Islands, we're quite fortunate for the services that are provided, because many of these services after past events were not available to us. So we all basically had to cope, use our own coping mechanisms to deal with these issues. But it is reassuring to know now that people who are suffering have somewhere to go. They have people who are trained, well-trained, and experts in their field to help them deal with these issues, as well. And again, I want to commend you all for the sterling job that you're doing as well. Folks, we're going to take a commercial break. We have been able to confirm that Radio Cayman will be carrying the press briefing on the coronavirus at 10 o'clock. Meanwhile, I will share with you some issues of the Tradewinds newspaper this time of the year, 1965, 1966, 1967, when we return from our commercial break. Please stay tuned for the record. We'll be back shortly.
At Seaboard Marine, customers often ask us questions about their shipments.
I have various items coming from different suppliers that I need to ship to Cayman. Do you offer consolidation?
Yes. Seaboard Marine offers consolidation for full and less than container loads. We can hold your packages at our Miami warehouse until everything arrives and ship it all in one go. And we have the best rates to Grand Cayman. Visit seaboardmarine.com for more information.
Shipping shore to shore, Seaboard.
Headlines. With the latest headlines.
One of Cayman's bright and shining young stars.
Local, regional, international.
Headlines.
Turning to international news. Updates on the hour between 7 a.m. and 6 p.m. on weekdays. All the news when you want it. Tune in to Radio Cayman for hourly headlines of the day's top stories.
Radio Cayman, your voice, your choice, your radio.
For the record, with Orrett Connor.
Initiating system.
For information that matters. For the record, with Orrett Connor. Continues right now on Radio Cayman.
Good morning and welcome back to For the Record. We have about 15 minutes left to go in the show. Just want to remind you that we have no internet service, so as a result, emails and everything else we're unable to receive at this point in time. We will double check to see whether or not it's back on yet, but so far no luck. So you've heard about communications in the Cayman Islands. We know that there's a joint communications office established by Hazard Management Cayman, getting information out to the public here in the Cayman Islands. You've heard us talk about social media and some people using it to provide sensational information to their colleagues, while we encourage more people to provide useful, helpful information. And in 1965, in the issue of the Tradewinds newspaper, dated the 4th of February, 1965. And you may have heard this before, but I think it's good to mention it again. Again, it serves to show us, how far we've reached in the Cayman Islands, not only because with the introduction of social media and everything else, but in terms of disseminating information to the public. And in that issue of the Tradewinds newspaper, there's an article introducing government PRO EO Panton. Now, PRO, the acronyms stand for Public Relations Officer in the Cayman Islands. And Mr. Ernest Panton was the first public relations officer after he retired from government. So the article says that Tradewinds has been accepted wholeheartedly as another step in the development of the Cayman Islands. As between government and the people, it can be a very useful publications. Napoleon Bonaparte once said, 4 hostile newspapers are more to be feared than 1,000 bayonets. Trade winds, I am certain, will in no way desire to be hostile, but we will bear in mind always the words of Richard J. Finnegan, who said, newspapers are owned by individuals and corporations, but freedom of the press belongs to the people. Then it goes on to talk about, says, until recently we had a government without a newspaper. Here, let me pay tribute to the gospel of the kingdom, which was read and no doubt will continue to be read with great interest. Now we have government and a newspaper. Many of you will have seen the public notice issued by the administrator announcing my appointment as government public relations officer. From time to time, and this is Mr. Ernest speaking now, from time to time, many of you will have seen the public notice issued by the administrator announcing my appointment as government public relations officer. From time to time, I shall contribute to a column to Tradewinds on behalf of the government. My intention will be, as the notice said, to submit the truth and the facts of any issue in question. Governments, it has been said, are like wheelbarrows, useful instruments, but they need to be pushed. Very interesting, right? Government is like wheelbarrows. They're useful instruments, but they need to be pushed. After all, it is the people who make their government, and good government is a good bargain at any price. We can only govern men by serving them. The rule is without exception. And then the Tradewinds newspaper, in a footnote, says that the Tradewinds welcomes the appointments of Mr. E.O. Patton as the Cayman's first public relations officer and looks forward to a very pleasant association with him in this capacity. Now, earlier in the show, we heard one of our callers, talk about getting information out to the public. We heard Mr. Kenneth Bryan offer his good offices to circulate pamphlets, leaflets in relation to the coronavirus, and that again also very helpful. But we see from this article, 1965, government public relations officer was appointed. I spoke earlier about the Joint Communications Unit that's established within Hazard Management Cayman as well, not to mention all of the press officers that are either pooled or in many instances government departments have their own press officers as well, and we constantly see news being disseminated to the public. We hope and we trust that the public is taking advantage of this information that is being provided to you. You have heard some of our guests talk about about relying on sources, reliable sources, rather than things that are posted on social media, some which may be reliable, others may not be. But if you're basically getting it from the source, that is more important than the information that you may receive on social media as well. What else can I share with you? Well, that issue of the Trade Winds newspaper also, Byron Lee and the Dragonaires did visit the Cayman Islands, had some drew some large crowds to events that took place in the Cayman Islands. What else did we have in 1965? There was a budget speech made by the administrator at that time. And let's see, what else do we have as far as Trade Winds newspaper is concerned? February the 3rd, 1966. So 1 year later, what was in the headlines? We had a picture of Cable and Wireless cable layer, the CS Mercury, that was here in the Cayman Islands to lay the submarine cables that would provide a vital telephone link for us here in the Cayman Islands. That was the start of the creation of the telephone network here in the Cayman Islands. Cable and Wireless, of course, you know, we don't have to you would know that they were the first providers of telephone service here in the Cayman Islands. And then, of course, when deregulation came along and we had other players who entered the industry as well. What else was in Trade Winds February 3rd, 1966? Gentleman by the name of Mr. Ernest Rivers had an article in there and talking about the Majestic, one of the schooners in the Cayman Islands. Mr. Willywood was the then correspondent for the Trade Winds newspaper in Bordentown. 1966, other events that took place, the sinking of the Miracle. Miracle, I believe, was in tow. Yep, she was in tow from Jamaica, and she sank on her way to the Cayman Islands. That occurred. Mr. Keith Parker Tibbetts Jr., he was the Cayman Brac reporter for the Trade Winds newspaper in those days as well. And he wrote some interesting stories about Cayman Brac. As a matter of fact, Cayman Brac, while it had a smaller population than the Cayman Islands, the Brac section of the news on the Trade Winds newspaper covered more than any other district at all. And the editorial in the newspaper on the 3rd of February 1966 had some comments in relation to the state of law enforcement in Grand Cayman. Says, unfortunately, it does not appear to, no, their comments, the editorial comments didn't seem to draw too much attention in relation to what traffic, law enforcement, the status of law enforcement in the Cayman Islands as well. Trying to see if I can find other Trade Winds newspaper that I brought up. Only two for that period as well. What else do we have here? 4 minutes to go. No calls. We had a netball team visit the Cayman Islands from Jamaica, playing netball in the Cayman Islands. That was at the same time that the Byron Lee and the Dragonaires was here as well. Want to remind our listening and viewing audience that there will be a press briefing on the coronavirus taking place at the government admin building at 10 o'clock. That will be covered live by Radio Cayman, and we urge you again to listen to that. You would have heard Dr. Lee, as well as the acting director of Customs and Border Control, Mr. Bruce Smith, here in the studio earlier, talking about the measures that are being put in place to deal with the coronavirus, also to reassure the public of the Cayman Islands that they basically have everything well in hand. They are following international established rules and procedures. The Cayman Islands has not, to my knowledge, and I'm not sure what will be announced at the press briefing, placed a ban on travel from travelers from China. We do not have direct flights from China. We have noted that in the news that there's one death that has taken place in the Philippines. That person traveled from China to the Philippines. They have also any concerns that we may have in relation to persons traveling from the Philippines, that there should be basically no real concern on that issue as well. Folks, I want to thank you for allowing Radio Cayman and, by extension, For the Record, into your homes, into your vehicles as you traverse the busy roads of the Cayman Islands, into your places of work, whether it be an office cubicle or if you're working in the outdoors. I also want to remind you that we are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. There is always someone out there who's less fortunate than we are, and I ask you to extend a helping hand to them. If you can't do that, then I suggest you donate to a worthy charity, because we always want to consider those who need, not necessarily those who want or even those who crave. I say to you, have a great day. Continue to support your radio station, Radio Cayman. Join Sterling, Dwayne Ebanks at 12:15 for Talk Today. And as usual, we ask the good Lord to bless these three beautiful, wonderful Cayman Islands.
For the Record is brought to you by Vamped Motors, the only authorized Ford and Toyota dealership serving the Cayman Islands. Cayman Pharmacy Group, with a location in West Bay and professional pharmacy at CTMH Doctors Hospital. The Cayman Pharmacy Group has a location for you just around the corner. Seaboard Marine, with over 35 shipping ports, find your shipping solution by calling 949-4977 or visit seaboardmarine.com for competitive rates. Rotary Central, for more than 110 years, Rotary members have used their passion, energy, and intelligence to take action on sustainable projects. Fidelity Bank, for all your banking needs, visit fidelitygroup.com. Fidelity, we're good for you. And Roper's Janitorial, complete janitorial service for commercial, industrial, and residential. They get the job done right every time.